The sun had just begun its ascent, scattering amber light across the vast, open expanse of the elite sniper training range. Dust rose lazily from the dirt paths, shimmering in the morning glow like tiny fragments of gold. Sergeant Emma Carter's boots crunched softly against the gravel as she strode toward the firing line, the familiar weight of her blue rifle resting comfortably in her hands. She had carried rifles heavier, ones far less precise, but this particular weapon, sleek, polished, and unmistakably blue, had been her companion for years, each scratch and mark a testament to battles fought and challenges overcome. Emma's presence immediately drew attention. A group of Navy SEAL trainees, mostly young men in their 20s, clustered near the far end of the range, their chatter faltering as they turned toward her. Rookie Alex Thompson, tall and cocky, leaned against a stack of ammunition crates with a smirk that hinted at both curiosity and condescension. "Is that her rifle?" he whispered to his friend, loud enough for her to hear if she cared to. "Looks like she's carrying a toy." A ripple of laughter followed, and a few trainees nudged each other, whispering bets on whether she could even hit a target beyond 100 meters. Emma ignored the snickers. She had learned early in her career that attention, especially the dismissive kind, was just noise. What mattered was focus, precision, and patience. Today, her task would be far greater than earning respect. It would be about proving that skill transcended prejudice. As she approached the firing line, the instructor's eyes followed her with professional curiosity. They had seen veterans before, and some had underestimated them, only to be proven wrong. Emma set her blue rifle down carefully on the shooting table, her movements deliberate, almost ceremonial. She checked the stock, adjusted the scope, and ran her fingers along the trigger guard. Each action was practiced, refined over years of experience. Even the trainees watching could sense the quiet authority in her motions. Alex Thompson's smirk faltered slightly, though he tried to mask it. "You sure that thing isn't going to break on you?" he said loudly, attempting to provoke a reaction. Emma didn't look up. Her eyes scanned the horizon, noting the position of distant targets, the direction of the wind, and the subtle sway of the tall grass that might affect a shot. Every factor mattered. She inhaled slowly, centering herself, letting the morning calm wash over her. The veteran's calmness only seemed to irk the young SEALs more. They whispered among themselves, their voices tinged with disbelief and doubt. "She's just a woman," one muttered under his breath, as if that explained everything. "She's got a fancy rifle, but she won't last." Emma had faced comments like these her entire life, from training ranges to active deployments. She had learned that underestimation was a weapon she could turn against her opponents. The less they believed in her, the greater her advantage. The wind shifted suddenly, a sharp gust carrying the scent of dry earth and gunpowder from the previous day's exercises. Emma adjusted the bipod on her rifle, setting it firmly against the table, ensuring stability. She checked the magazine, each round meticulously seated, her eyes scanning for any imperfection. The SEALs' laughter quieted slightly as they noticed the care and attention she put into her preparation. Even Alex, for all his bravado, could not hide a flicker of uncertainty. She set her cheek against the stock, closing her eyes for a moment to feel the balance, the weight, the familiar hum of readiness that came with a rifle in her hands. Memories flashed briefly, long nights under starlit skies, tense moments waiting for the perfect shot, the pressure of knowing a single decision could save lives or cost them. These weren't just memories. They were proof of why she belonged here. Every motion, every adjustment, was backed by experience that no amount of laughter could erase. The instructors gathered near the firing line, their presence commanding attention. They called the trainees to order, explaining the day's challenge, a long-distance precision test, the kind that separated ordinary shooters from elite marksmen. Targets would appear at distances most had never attempted, testing calculation, patience, and nerves. Emma listened, her mind already running through trajectories, wind speeds, and bullet drop. To her, the numbers were familiar companions. She could almost feel the bullet's path before it left the barrel. Rookie Alex shifted uncomfortably, sensing the seriousness of the moment but unwilling to admit it. "This is insane," he muttered to no one in particular. "She's going to fail." Emma heard it, of course. She could hear everything, the doubt, the ridicule, the tension, but she allowed none of it to touch her focus. She had been underestimated before, and each time she had proven her skill. Today would be no different. She crouched briefly, adjusting her scope to account for the early morning light and the subtle shimmer of heat waves rising from the distant range. Her fingers traced the elevation knobs, each click a calculated move. She breathed slowly, rhythmically, centering herself. The world seemed to narrow to the scope, the rifle, and the distant horizon. Everything else, the laughter, the smirks, the skeptical glances, faded into insignificance. The trainees began to murmur again, this time with nervous curiosity rather than mockery. They could sense the veteran's mastery, even if they refused to admit it openly. Emma's reputation as a sharpshooter was known in certain circles, but many had yet to witness it firsthand. Today would change that. Today would be a lesson not just for Alex, but for every trainee who had judged her based on appearance rather than ability. Emma adjusted her grip and ran her eyes over the terrain, noting every subtle shift in shadow and movement. She could feel the tension in the air, the collective anticipation of the room. She allowed herself a small smile, not of triumph, but of readiness. The blue rifle, once mocked, was now her silent partner, capable of extraordinary precision in skilled hands. She stood briefly, stretching slightly to shake off tension, and then returned to her position. Alex's smirk had faded entirely now, replaced by a cautious wariness. The other trainees looked on, some with disbelief, some with grudging respect, and some still clinging to skepticism. Emma, however, remained impervious to their reactions. She knew her focus was her greatest weapon, and today it would speak louder than words or laughter. As the wind continued to whip across the range, Emma adjusted her bipod one final time, checked her scope, and breathed deeply. The stage was set. Every detail mattered: the rifle, the wind, the distance, and above all, the shooter's resolve. The once dismissive range had transformed into a crucible of skill and focus. And in the center of it all, Sergeant Emma Carter, the veteran with the blue rifle, was ready to demonstrate that true mastery is earned through patience, precision, and unwavering confidence. With that, she lowered her cheek to the stock, aligning her sight with the distant horizon, and waited for the moment that would define the day, ready to turn ridicule into astonishment. The wind whipped across the range, carrying dust and grit into the faces of the trainees as they watched Sergeant Emma Carter meticulously prepare her rifle. Rookie Alex Thompson leaned against a stack of crates, arms crossed, his smirk returning, this time sharper, more condescending. "Seriously," he said, voice loud enough for a few nearby trainees to hear, "that blue thing isn't going to do anything beyond a few 100 meters." Hope she brought backup. Laughter bubbled from the group like a nervous ripple of water, a mix of mockery and disbelief. Emma didn't flinch. She didn't even glance in Alex's direction. Every fiber of her being was focused on the rifle, on the scope, and on the distant horizon where her target would appear. She ran her fingers along the barrel, feeling its smooth metal surface, the custom modifications she had painstakingly tuned for maximum stability. Each click, each adjustment, was performed with the precision of a seasoned professional. Experience was her armor, and it shielded her from ridicule. The instructors watched silently, arms crossed, evaluating not only the trainees, but also Emma. She had been brought here not for entertainment, but to test her skill against the most elite Navy SEALs in training. Some of the instructors had heard rumors of her marksmanship tales of impossible, long-range shots made in the field, but few had seen her in action. Today, the room would witness her expertise firsthand. Alex, growing frustrated at the lack of reaction, leaned closer to another trainee, whispering, "She's probably never even fired at this distance. Look at her, it's cute. Really." He chuckled, but his laugh was forced, riddled with uncertainty. The other trainees tittered, but some began to glance uneasily at Emma, noticing her unwavering calm. Her posture, her slow and deliberate movements, spoke of someone who had faced challenges far greater than a few skeptical rookies. Emma adjusted the bipod of her rifle, ensuring it rested firmly against the shooting table. She ran her eyes across the horizon, taking in every detail: the swaying grass, the glint of sunlight off distant obstacles, the subtle shimmer of heat waves rising from the range. Each element would affect the trajectory of her shot. Each element was already accounted for in her mind. She exhaled slowly, centering herself, letting the calm of decades of training settle over her like a familiar cloak. Alex scoffed again. "She's probably counting on luck." His voice carried arrogance, but it was tempered with a hint of unease. He glanced at the instructors, hoping someone would share his amusement. Instead, the instructor's eyes were locked on Emma, evaluating her technique, noting her poise, and the quiet confidence that radiated from her every movement. They saw what Alex refused to admit: she was more than capable. A few trainees, trying to regain composure, nudged each other, whispering bets on whether she would hit the target at all. The snickers were nervous now, tinged with curiosity. They could sense that Emma's reputation as a veteran sharpshooter was more than just rumor. Her hands moved with precision, adjusting the scope for elevation and windage, calculating every parameter with practiced ease. Even her breathing was deliberate, synchronized with the rhythm of the rifle and the environment. Emma's calm was almost infuriating to Alex. His arrogance clashed with the quiet power radiating from her stance. He stepped closer, arms folded, attempting to assert dominance, though he knew deep down that he had no real control here. "You sure you know what you're doing?" he asked, a hint of challenge in his voice. The words were meant to provoke, but Emma didn't flinch. She didn't need to respond. Her actions would speak louder than any taunt. She adjusted the scope again, tracing the trajectory of the bullet in her mind. Distance, wind, humidity, even subtle shifts in temperature, all factors she had accounted for. Her finger hovered lightly over the trigger, but she didn't fire. Not yet. Precision required patience, and patience was her ally. The rookie, however, saw hesitation where none existed. He misinterpreted her calm for uncertainty, a mistake he would regret. As Emma prepared, she noticed the subtle reactions of the other trainees. Some were trying to hide their curiosity, their eyes flicking from the rifle to her face and back to the horizon. A few tried to maintain their mockery, but it lacked conviction. Even they could sense that this was not a display of ordinary skill. This was mastery refined through years of practice, of calculated risk, and of unwavering mental discipline. The instructors finally broke the silence, issuing a reminder about the challenge. The target, a small drone, would appear at 4,000 meters, one of the most difficult shots on the range. Alex scoffed, muttering under his breath, "That's impossible." She never hit that. Emma didn't flinch. She had faced impossible shots before in the field, in training, under pressure far greater than any mockery could replicate. She repositioned herself, checking the stability of her bipod, the alignment of the scope, the pressure on the trigger. Every movement was slow and deliberate. She wasn't performing for the trainees. She was preparing for a challenge that demanded every ounce of focus she could muster. Alex, watching from a few feet away, felt a twinge of doubt for the first time. The smirk that had seemed so natural a few minutes ago was gone. He straightened, suddenly aware that this wasn't going to be a simple demonstration. The wind gusted again, stronger this time, tugging at hair and uniforms alike. Emma accounted for it effortlessly, adjusting her aim with subtle, almost imperceptible movements. She could feel the rifle settling, the stock aligning perfectly against her shoulder. The blue color, once mocked, now symbolized readiness, precision, and the culmination of years of training. Alex noticed this, though he refused to admit it, his jaw tightening as he watched. Other trainees began whispering among themselves, some nervously, others in awe. The ridicule that had filled the air moments ago had been replaced by tension, by the unspoken acknowledgement that Emma Carter was no ordinary competitor. She had commanded their attention, not through words, but through skill, poise, and focus. Even the instructors exchanged glances, silently noting the veteran's mastery. Alex tried one more time to regain control of the situation. "Well, good luck, I guess," he said, voice tight with frustration and disbelief. Emma looked up briefly, her eyes meeting his. There was no malice, no arrogance, just quiet assurance. Her gaze said everything he needed to know. She was prepared, focused, and utterly confident in her abilities. The words he had used to mock her were meaningless here. Only the rifle, the target, and her skill mattered. She exhaled slowly, adjusting her cheek against the stock one final time. Her focus narrowed to a single point on the horizon, where the drone would soon appear. The room seemed to fade away, leaving only her rifle, and the distant target. Every distraction, every insult, every laugh was irrelevant. She had been underestimated before, and she would not be again. The trainees, sensing the imminent challenge, began to hold their breath, some unconsciously stepping back. Alex felt a pang of unease, an unfamiliar emotion, as he watched Emma's methodical preparation. Her calm, her poise, and the precision with which she handled her rifle were commanding, even to those who refused to acknowledge her skill openly. Finally, the instructors signaled that the drone would appear shortly. Emma's finger hovered lightly over the trigger, her mind running through the calculations one last time. Every gust of wind, every ripple of heat, every subtle movement of the drone had been accounted for. She was ready. The mockery, the doubt, the sneers, they all dissolved into irrelevance. Only the shot mattered now. As the first faint hum of the drone reached her ears, Emma centered herself, her eyes narrowing slightly in focus. The dismissive attitude of the trainees, Alex's laughter, and the initial disbelief of the instructors, all of it had led to this precise moment. She didn't need to prove herself to anyone. She only needed to execute what she had trained for countless times. And in that moment, with the rifle steady beneath her, Sergeant Emma Carter was the embodiment of calm, control, and precision. The distant hum of the drone grew steadily louder, cutting through the morning wind like a tiny, persistent heartbeat. All eyes on the range fixed on it, but none were as still and focused as Sergeant Emma Carter. She rested her cheek firmly against the blue stock of her rifle, the metal cool and reassuring beneath her fingers. Every breath, every subtle shift in posture, was part of a ritual she had perfected over countless missions and countless shots. Today, the 4,000-meter distance made the challenge nearly legendary, and the trainees, especially rookie Alex Thompson, could hardly conceal their disbelief. "Target appears in 30 seconds, the instructor announced, his voice crisp and steady. The trainees fumbled with their scopes and adjusted their positions, but Emma remained utterly composed. Her mind had already run through all variables: wind direction, air density, temperature changes across the long distance, and even the minute sway of the drone as it cut through the air. For her, calculation and instinct were inseparable, two sides of the same coin. Alex leaned forward, unconsciously holding his breath. He had been certain of her failure, certain that this veteran with her flashy blue rifle was out of her depth. But as he watched her hands move deliberately over the knobs of her scope, adjusting for elevation and windage, doubt crept in. There was no hesitation in her movements, no fumbling, no sign of uncertainty. Even the instructors exchanged subtle glances, impressed by the veteran's precision under pressure. The drone dipped and weaved across the horizon, its speed a formidable challenge, even for the most seasoned shooters. Emma adjusted her stance slightly, her legs braced, her grip firm but relaxed. She exhaled slowly, synchronizing her breathing with the gentle sway of the rifle, as if it were an extension of her own body. The blue rifle, once a source of mockery, now looked almost alive in her hands, a tool honed to perfection and ready to perform beyond expectation. Alex muttered under his breath, "She can't possibly hit that." But even he paused mid-sentence, watching the veteran with growing unease. Her calm was unnerving, the kind of calm that came only from experience forged in pressure and danger. He had faced challenges before, but nothing prepared him for this level of discipline and precision. Every adjustment Emma made was deliberate, calculated, and nearly imperceptible to the untrained eye. Emma's scope tracked the drone, each movement a study in meticulous control. She calculated the time it would take for the bullet to reach the target, factoring in wind, elevation, and air density. Her finger hovered lightly over the trigger, poised but relaxed. The room around her seemed to shrink, sounds fading into a distant hum as her focus sharpened. The laughter, the ridicule, and even the tension of the trainees became background noise. Here, there was only precision, patience, and preparation. The instructor signaled that the drone was now fully visible. A collective murmur rose from the trainees, but it was half curiosity, half disbelief. They had watched Emma prepare, but this was the moment of truth. The drone moved erratically now, a tiny metallic dot that bobbed and weaved, testing the patience and skill of anyone attempting a long-range hit. For most, the odds were insurmountable. For Emma, this was a challenge she had trained for, a puzzle waiting to be solved. She adjusted the windage knob slightly, her eyes narrowing as she predicted the subtle changes in trajectory. She remembered the countless drills, the countless missions where such adjustments had saved lives. Her blue rifle responded perfectly to each calculated change, the barrel aligning precisely with the path she envisioned. For Emma, shooting was more than pulling a trigger. It was anticipating, calculating, and harmonizing with physics in real time. Alex's smirk had vanished entirely. He watched her, tense, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. His own rifle, a standard issue, suddenly felt heavy and imprecise in his hands. He had trained hard, but all of his confidence now seemed inadequate compared to Emma's quiet mastery. Each second felt drawn out, every tiny motion of the veteran amplified in his awareness. He realized he had misjudged her entirely, and that realization carried a bitter sting. The drone dipped again, now veering slightly to the left. Emma adjusted her scope, recalculating the trajectory almost instinctively. Her focus was absolute. She accounted for gravity, wind, and even minor changes in atmospheric density. Her finger traced the trigger with a feather-light touch, ready to release at precisely the right moment. The room seemed to hold its breath alongside her. Even the instructors, usually stoic and composed, exchanged subtle nods, recognizing the magnitude of what was about to happen. She waited for the perfect moment, a fraction of a second where the drone's path, wind drift, and bullet trajectory aligned. Emma's eyes tracked the target with unflinching intensity, and then almost imperceptibly, she squeezed the trigger. The recoil was minimal, absorbed seamlessly by her posture and technique. The bullet began its journey across the vast distance, a silent messenger of skill and precision. Time seemed to stretch. The drone danced across the horizon, swaying in the wind, but Emma's calculations were flawless. Trainees leaned forward, unable to tear their eyes from the scene, their skepticism replaced with a tense, uneasy curiosity. Alex's hands clenched, his jaw tight, as he silently counted the seconds. He had assumed failure, and now he realized he might witness something extraordinary. The instructors tracked the bullet's path, noting the precision with which it traveled. Even at 4,000 meters, the round maintained its trajectory, cutting through the air with an elegance that defied expectations. Emma remained perfectly still, her eyes never leaving the target, her mind fully engaged in monitoring the environment and the bullet's flight. Every second brought anticipation, suspense, and the possibility of complete triumph. As the bullet neared the drone, all calculations aligned perfectly. A crisp, clean impact echoed across the range. The drone struck dead center. The hum of its engine ceased instantly, and silence fell over the trainees like a heavy fog. Emma lowered her rifle, calm and composed, as if the feat had been routine. The blue rifle, once mocked, now gleamed in the sunlight as a symbol of mastery and precision. Alex staggered back, his mouth slightly open, eyes wide with shock. He had expected failure, ridicule, and maybe even embarrassment, but what he witnessed was something he hadn't anticipated: absolute skill under pressure. The veteran had executed a shot so precise, so flawlessly calculated, that it left even the most confident trainees stunned into silence. Whispers of awe spread through the group. Some trainees exchanged glances, nodding subtly in recognition of her mastery. Others, still processing the event, could barely speak. Alex, however, felt something deeper than surprise. He felt the crushing weight of humility. The arrogance he had carried moments ago dissolved completely. Emma's calm, her preparation, and her flawless execution left no room for doubt. The instructors finally spoke, their voices steady but impressed. "Exceptional shot," one said simply, the weight of those words resonating across the range. Emma didn't respond with pride or self-congratulation. She only nodded slightly, acknowledging the recognition without ceremony. Her focus, once entirely on preparation and execution, now shifted to observation and reflection. She had proven not to the trainees, but to herself, the consistency of her skills and the power of discipline. The moment left a palpable impression. The trainees, once skeptical, now looked at her with newfound respect. Alex, still struggling to find words, finally muttered, I didn't think you could do that." Emma's eyes met his briefly, calm and unwavering, her expression saying more than any words could. Confidence was not about boasting. It was about preparation, focus, and execution. Today, she had demonstrated all three in abundance. The wind continued to blow across the range, but the tension had shifted. The room had transformed from a place of doubt and mockery to one of respect, acknowledgement, and awe. Emma's blue rifle, once derided, now symbolized precision, mastery, and the quiet power of experience. And in that instant, she had not only completed the challenge, but also reshaped the perceptions of everyone watching, leaving an indelible impression on the rookie who had doubted her most. The echo of the drone's impact lingered in the air like a tangible presence, yet the range remained unusually silent. The trainees stared, wide-eyed, some frozen mid-motion, their disbelief palpable. Even Alex Thompson, the brash rookie who had mocked Emma's blue rifle just hours earlier, couldn't tear his gaze away. His usual bravado had vanished, replaced by a knot of anxiety and awe. Emma remained composed, her posture steady, eyes scanning the distant horizon, analyzing the residual wind patterns and the shifting sunlight that might affect subsequent shots. The instructors exchanged quiet nods, impressed by the poise and precision Emma displayed. The veteran's calm had transformed the atmosphere of the range. What had been a chaotic, competitive environment, filled with whispers and laughter, now felt like a courtroom of skill, judgment, and scrutiny. Every trainee instinctively understood that the rules had changed. This wasn't a simple marksmanship exercise. It was a masterclass unfolding in real time. Alex shifted uneasily, his hands tightening around his rifle. His mind raced with the realization that he had severely underestimated her. He replayed the moments before the shot, remembering his sarcastic remarks, the laughter he had shared with the other trainees, and the smirk he had worn with such confidence. Each memory now carried a bitter sting. Emma had executed a near-impossible 4,000-meter shot, and he had witnessed it firsthand. The humiliation was immediate, but mingled with that was a deep, reluctant admiration. The instructors called the trainees to attention, signaling that more challenges would follow. This was no ordinary test. It was a sequence designed to push limits, measure mental endurance, and expose weaknesses. Emma adjusted her position slightly, her fingers brushing lightly over the bipod of her blue rifle. The metal felt cool against her palms, grounding her in the moment. She was fully aware of the weight of expectation, not from herself, but from the hundreds of silent assumptions she intended to shatter. The drone reappeared on the horizon, this time moving faster, swaying unpredictably against the morning sun. The trainees fumbled with their equipment, nerves evident in every twitch and adjustment. Alex's eyes darted to Emma, searching for a hint of faltering, but found none. Every move she made was deliberate, precise, and fluid. Her breathing remained slow, controlled, her entire body aligned perfectly with the rifle. Alex's confidence continued to crumble. He realized that mastery wasn't about speed or aggression. It was about patience, focus, and the kind of mental discipline he had yet to acquire. Emma calculated the bullet drop, factoring in the long distance and environmental variables with split-second accuracy. Each adjustment of the scope was purposeful, each micro-movement honed over years of experience. She felt the slight vibration of the earth under her boots, the subtle sway of the bipod, and the faint changes in wind direction. All of it mattered. All of it had been accounted for. Her mind was a precision instrument, as finely tuned as the rifle itself. A few of the trainees, noticing her meticulous approach, began to whisper to each other. "How does she do that?" One murmured, barely audible over the wind. Another trainee leaned closer, his skepticism replaced by curiosity. She's a machine," he said under his breath. Even Alex could no longer deny what he was seeing. The veteran had shifted the psychological balance entirely. Where he had expected failure, there was only the undeniable demonstration of competence. The instructor signaled the trainees to prepare for their own attempts, but Emma remained in position, her eyes tracking the drone. Alex's hands trembled slightly as he gripped his rifle. His mind raced with doubt. He had trained hard, yet nothing in his experience could match the calm, calculated precision Emma displayed. He realized that no amount of raw power or aggressive technique could replicate the combination of skill, patience, and intuition she embodied. Emma exhaled slowly, centering herself for the next shot. The wind gusted stronger this time, tugging at her jacket and hair, but she remained undisturbed. She accounted for the sudden shift, adjusting her scope with imperceptible precision. Her fingers, steady and deliberate, moved over the controls as though they were extensions of her mind. Each calculation was precise, every motion a reflection of instinct and experience. The trainees watched in tense silence, their anticipation mounting with each second. Alex muttered under his breath, frustration and admiration mingling in equal measure. "It's unbelievable," he said, barely believing his own words. He had mocked her mere moments ago, yet now he was captivated by the ease and mastery with which she operated. The veteran's focus was absolute, leaving no room for error, hesitation, or distraction. For Alex, this was a lesson in humility and a harsh reminder of how easily assumptions could be shattered. The drone swerved slightly, forcing Emma to recalculate. Her eyes narrowed as she anticipated its trajectory, her mind moving faster than any muscle. She accounted for wind, distance, gravity, and even the subtle distortion caused by the heat rising from the range. Her posture shifted minutely, aligning her body with the predicted path of the bullet. Every micro-adjustment was flawless. Alex and the other trainees held their breath, the tension in the air nearly palpable. Emma's breathing remained steady, her heart calm. She could feel the rifle responding perfectly to her touch, as if it were an extension of herself, rather than a separate instrument. The blue rifle, once mocked, now gleamed with purpose, each scratch and mark a testament to countless hours of practice and battles faced. The trainees' laughter, once pervasive, had been replaced by silence, awe, and the quiet realization that they were witnessing something extraordinary. The instructors observed quietly, nodding subtly to one another. They had seen exceptional shooters before, but Emma's performance transcended raw ability. It was mental mastery, the combination of experience, patience, and unshakable focus that distinguished her from anyone else on the range. Even the most confident trainees felt the weight of their own inexperience in contrast to her mastery. Emma's eyes tracked the drone with unwavering intensity. Every subtle movement, every shift in the breeze was accounted for. Her finger hovered over the trigger, poised for the perfect moment. The room felt suspended in time. The sound of the wind, the faint hum of the drone, and the distant chatter of the trainees all seemed to fade into the background. Only Emma, her rifle, and the target existed in this suspended moment. Alex's jaw clenched as he struggled to focus. He had trained for months, maybe years, yet he realized he had never encountered anything like this. Emma's mastery was not just skill, it was an aura of precision, discipline, and unyielding calm that made every novice's hands tremble. He glanced at the other trainees, noticing their wide eyes, the subtle shifting of weight, and the almost reverent silence that had settled over the range. Finally, the instructors gave the signal. The drone was fully visible, moving in a pattern designed to test precision under pressure. Emma's eyes narrowed slightly, and with the faintest exhale, she began her calculations anew, adjusting for speed, wind, and trajectory. The trainees watched, tense, knowing that the next shot could redefine everything they thought they knew about skill, discipline, and the limits of human capability. Time seemed to stretch, the seconds elongating as Emma prepared for her next move. Each micro-adjustment of the rifle was deliberate, calculated, and flawless. Her entire body moved as one with the blue rifle, every motion designed to reduce error and optimize precision. Alex felt a pang of both fear and admiration. He had mocked her, underestimated her, and now he was witnessing an undeniable master at work. As the wind shifted again, Emma adjusted her stance slightly, her finger lightly tracing the trigger. She exhaled, her mind a calm storm of calculations and anticipation. The trainees, now silent and tense, sensed the magnitude of what was about to happen. This was more than a test. It was a lesson in skill, focus, and the quiet power of experience. And in that moment, Emma Carter, veteran and marksman, remained unshaken. The tension in the room was a living thing, but she was its master, poised to convert every moment of anticipation into flawless execution. The range, the trainees, and even rookie Alex Thompson had been transformed from doubt into awe. The stage was set. The drone's faint hum was now the only sound that cut through the charged silence of the range. Every eye was locked on the tiny speck in the sky, and every trainee held their breath. Even the wind seemed to pause, as if nature itself had sensed the significance of the moment. Sergeant Emma Carter remained perfectly still, her body aligned, her cheek pressed firmly against the stock of her blue rifle, her finger poised over the trigger. She had prepared for this, calculated for this, and visualized this shot countless times in her mind. The drone danced across the horizon, a tiny, unpredictable target moving against the morning sun's glare. Emma's eyes tracked it with unwavering intensity. She accounted for every variable distance, wind gusts, subtle shifts in temperature, bullet drop, and even the minute sway caused by heat waves rising from the ground. For most shooters, a 4,000-meter shot would be a near impossible gamble. For Emma, it was the culmination of years of practice, experience, and a deep understanding of physics in motion. Alex Thompson, the rookie who had mocked her mere minutes before, leaned forward, tense, fists gripping his rifle as if it were a lifeline. His heartbeat thundered in his chest, and he felt the sting of humility washing over him. He had assumed failure. He had expected embarrassment. Instead, he found himself captivated, riveted by a mastery he could scarcely comprehend. Every movement Emma made was deliberate, precise, and fluid, and he could not look away. Emma adjusted the windage knob slightly, her eyes narrowing in concentration. The drone swayed unpredictably, testing every marksman who dared attempt it. Her breathing remained controlled, steady, synchronized with the gentle sway of the rifle. She exhaled slowly, centering herself, preparing for the single defining moment. The veteran's calm contrasted sharply with the nervous energy radiating from the trainees, creating a visual dichotomy of experience versus inexperience, composure versus doubt. The instructors watched intently, noting the subtle micro-adjustments Emma made. They could see that she wasn't just reacting, she was anticipating, predicting the drone's movement, calculating the precise moment to release the bullet. Each adjustment of her scope, each subtle shift of her posture, was perfectly synchronized with her mental map of the target's trajectory. Her presence exuded absolute authority, a quiet power that silenced the room. The drone dipped slightly, moving to the left, swaying in the wind. Emma's finger traced the trigger with feather-light precision, the moment of release imminent. She calculated distance, speed, wind, and gravity simultaneously, a mental symphony orchestrated to perfection. The trainees could feel the tension mounting, their nerves fraying under the weight of expectation. Even Alex, the once smug rookie, felt his confidence slip as he witnessed the extraordinary control Emma commanded. Time seemed suspended. The drone's hum, the whisper of the wind, and the faint rustle of distant grass all became secondary to the single point of focus, Emma's blue rifle and the moving target. She inhaled deliberately, exhaled deliberately, and then, with the faintest, almost imperceptible squeeze, released the trigger. The bullet left the barrel with a whisper, slicing through the air like a streak of intent. It was a bullet guided by precision, experience, and absolute focus. The trainees followed its path, their eyes wide with disbelief. 4,000 meters of air and space separated shooter from target, yet the bullet maintained its trajectory perfectly. Alex's jaw dropped, and his hands trembled ever so slightly on his rifle. He had never witnessed anything like this, not in training, not in simulations, not in his wildest expectations. The veteran had transformed a near impossible challenge into a demonstration of undeniable mastery. Emma's eyes tracked the drone, her mind predicting its every shift, every sway, every tiny deviation. She was not just observing the bullet's flight. She was connected to it, anticipating its path with an intimacy born of years of practice. The air seemed to pulse with tension as every second stretched into eternity. The other trainees leaned forward involuntarily, their disbelief giving way to fascination and growing awe. The drone bobbed one last time, and then, with precision that seemed almost supernatural, the bullet struck it dead center. There was no hesitation, no waddle, no error. The impact was clean, the engine's hum ceased instantly, and the tiny metallic target fell to the ground like a defeated adversary. Silence engulfed the range. Emma lowered her rifle, calm and composed, as though this had been routine. The blue rifle gleamed in the morning light, a silent testament to the skill and preparation that had produced such a flawless shot. Alex staggered back, his mouth slightly open, eyes wide with shock. The arrogant smirk that had defined him moments before was gone entirely. He had expected failure, ridicule, and perhaps embarrassment. Instead, he had witnessed mastery, absolute and undeniable. A veteran had executed the impossible, and he had seen it firsthand. For the first time, he understood the gap between arrogance and experience, between overconfidence and skill. The other trainees, still processing the moment, exchanged glances. Some whispered in awe, others simply nodded, unable to articulate the amazement they felt. Emma's calm demeanor, combined with flawless execution, had transformed the range from a theater of mockery into a stage of respect and recognition. Even the instructors, known for their stoicism, allowed a subtle nod of approval. She had elevated the standard of what was possible in long-range marksmanship. Alex finally found his voice, though it was tinged with humility. I didn't think you could do that," he stammered, his previous arrogance replaced with a grudging acknowledgement. Emma met his gaze, her expression calm, almost serene, conveying more than words ever could. Confidence was not boastful. She seemed to say it was quiet, precise, and proven through action. Alex's ego had taken a hit, but his respect for her was now undeniable. The tension in the room remained thick, but it had shifted from anticipation to reflection. Trainees who had laughed and mocked were now silent, considering the skill, patience, and discipline required for such a shot. Even those who had doubted her most were forced to acknowledge that Emma Carter was no ordinary veteran. She was a marksman who had mastered both rifle and mind, whose preparation and focus could turn the impossible into reality. Emma didn't linger in the moment. She rechecked her scope, adjusted her stance, and prepared for the next phase of the challenge. Her calm was infectious, subtly reminding the trainees that mastery was not about spectacle. It was about preparation, precision, and unwavering focus. Alex, still reeling, realized that humility was now his most valuable lesson. The veteran had taught it without words, simply through action. The instructors called for the trainees to attempt their own shots, but the mood had shifted irrevocably. Mockery and doubt had been replaced by respect and awe. Alex hesitated, aware that his confidence was fragile compared to the veteran's mastery. The blue rifle, once laughed at, had become a symbol of skill, discipline, and the quiet power of experience. Emma's shot would be discussed and remembered long after this morning on the range. Emma's gaze swept across the trainees, noting their reactions, but she said nothing. Words were unnecessary. The shot had spoken for her, silencing mockery and skepticism in a single, flawless execution. The blue rifle rested in her hands, no longer a curiosity, but a tool of mastery, proof that skill, focus, and experience outweighed appearances and assumptions. As the morning sun climbed higher, Emma lowered the rifle and took a slow breath, savoring the completion of what most would consider impossible. She had turned ridicule into astonishment, skepticism into respect, and doubt into admiration. Alex Thompson, the rookie who had laughed the loudest, now felt a mix of humility, awe, and determination, a desire to learn, to grow, and perhaps to someday reach the standard she had set effortlessly. The moment had passed, but its impact lingered. Every trainee on that range had witnessed something extraordinary. Emma Carter, veteran and master marksman, had demonstrated the quiet, unstoppable power of preparation, skill, and mental discipline. The range, once filled with mockery, now resonated with the reverent echoes of awe. And at the center of it all, the veteran stood poised, calm, and utterly unshakable, ready for whatever challenge came next. The silence that followed the bullet's impact was deafening. The drone lay on the ground, a tiny, defeated target after a flawless 4,000-meter journey. For a moment, nobody moved. Trainees froze mid-step, eyes wide, mouths slightly agape, as if the magnitude of what they had witnessed hadn't fully registered. The wind, once whispering across the range, now seemed muted, as though even nature itself was holding its breath in recognition. Sergeant Emma Carter lowered her blue rifle calmly, her posture relaxed, exuding a quiet authority that filled the room more effectively than any words ever could. Alex Thompson, the brash rookie who had mocked her only moments earlier, staggered backward, his hands gripping his rifle as though it were suddenly foreign to him. His jaw hung slack, his mind racing to process what he had just witnessed. There's no way, he muttered under his breath, voice trembling with disbelief. His earlier laughter, sarcasm, and smug confidence had vanished completely, replaced by awe and a hint of fear. He had misjudged her entirely. The other trainees reacted in various ways. Some whispered in disbelief, nervously stepping closer to the instructors for reassurance. Others exchanged wide-eyed glances, silently acknowledging that they had underestimated her. A few simply sat down on crates, unable to process the sheer skill that had just unfolded before their eyes. Even the most confident among them, the ones who had laughed alongside Alex, felt a twinge of humility creep into their pride. Emma had demonstrated mastery that none could ignore. The instructors, ever composed, allowed a small smile to tug at the corners of their mouths. One of them broke the silence, voice low but carrying weight. Exceptional shot. Absolute precision. That's mastery. The statement was simple, but its resonance was immense. Every trainee understood it implicitly. This was not luck. This was not a fluke. This was skill, focus, and discipline honed to perfection. Emma had redefined the standard in their eyes. Alex stumbled to a halt, jaw tight, gaze fixed on Emma. He had believed that confidence and aggression could carry him through challenges. Yet here was a veteran whose calm, deliberate mastery had eclipsed his bravado in a single impossible moment. He replayed his earlier comments in his head, the smirks, the laughter, the underestimation, and felt the sting of humility sharper than any physical blow. Emma hadn't just hit a target. She had shattered assumptions, dismantled arrogance, and rewritten his understanding of capability. Emma didn't gloat, didn't smile triumphantly. She simply rechecked her scope, her breathing calm, her focus intact. The blue rifle rested in her hands, gleaming softly in the morning sunlight, no longer a source of ridicule, but a symbol of expertise. Every trainee felt the weight of that transformation. The rifle itself, once mocked, now embodied precision, patience, and the quiet but undeniable authority of experience. Alex, despite himself, felt a strange pull of admiration for the veteran. The drone's tiny metallic body lay on the ground, insignificant in size but monumental in meaning. It represented the impossible, the challenge that most thought insurmountable. Emma's shot had transformed it into a lesson in humility for every trainee present. The room was no longer a battlefield of mockery. It had become a classroom of respect and realization. Alex, who had assumed dominance, now realized that experience and preparation could outweigh raw confidence every time. Emma scanned the horizon briefly, noting the subtle changes in wind and light. Even after the perfect shot, she remained focused, as if each detail mattered, as if perfection could always be refined further. The trainees, in contrast, were struggling to process what had occurred. Their own rifles, once extensions of their confidence, suddenly felt inadequate in comparison. Alex's hands trembled slightly as he gripped his weapon, realizing that mastery required far more than the bravado he had carried. Whispers spread among the group. "Did you see that?" One trainee asked quietly. Another nodded, eyes wide. She didn't just hit it. She made it look effortless. Even those who had mocked her moments before were now compelled to acknowledge the undeniable truth. Emma Carter was extraordinary. She had transformed skepticism into astonishment without a single word, her actions speaking louder than any boast could. Alex finally found his voice, though it was hesitant and tinged with humility. I didn't think you could do that," he admitted, his tone carrying both shock and respect. He couldn't meet her eyes fully, aware of how starkly his assumptions had failed him. Emma looked at him briefly, calm and unwavering, conveying more in that glance than any verbal acknowledgement could. She had proven the point. Mastery is not loud. It does not demand attention. It is recognized by results and by composure under pressure. The instructors called for a short pause, allowing the trainees to recover from the emotional impact of witnessing the shot. Some sank to crates, their minds racing, replaying the bullet's trajectory in disbelief. Others, still tense, exchanged glances of unspoken acknowledgement. Emma had set a standard that none of them had yet approached. Alex, meanwhile, felt a mixture of humiliation and inspiration. He had underestimated her, yet he could not deny that she had earned his respect entirely. Emma rechecked her rifle in her position, preparing for the next phase of the challenge. The blue rifle gleamed, a silent testament to her expertise, while the trainees, still shaken, began to comprehend the extent of what they had seen. Alex's earlier mockery now seemed absurd in retrospect. The veteran had not only executed the impossible, she had done so with a calmness that underscored her mastery. Every trainee felt the weight of this realization pressing upon them. The wind picked up slightly, rustling clothing and hair, but Emma remained unshaken. She adjusted the bipod slightly, checked the scope one last time, and exhaled slowly. Her focus was absolute. The trainees watched, tense, knowing that every micro-movement could determine the outcome of the next challenge. The silence of awe had replaced the chatter and ridicule that had filled the morning air. Even Alex felt a pang of nervous anticipation, realizing that Emma's next actions would only deepen the impact of her mastery. Emma's eyes scanned the horizon one last time, noting every minor shift in light, wind, and potential trajectory. She had prepared for this moment for decades, training under pressure, calculating variables, and developing instincts that few could match. The blue rifle, once a source of amusement, now symbolized skill, patience, and experience distilled into precision. Every trainee in the room felt the change, from mockery to admiration, from doubt to recognition. The instructors spoke quietly among themselves, noting how Emma's performance had shifted the atmosphere of the range entirely. It was no longer just a test of skill. It was a demonstration of what mastery truly looked like, a benchmark for every trainee to aspire to. Alex, watching in stunned silence, realized that the lesson extended beyond marksmanship. It was a lesson in humility, preparation, and respect. Emma finally relaxed slightly, lowering her rifle completely, though her gaze remained calm and observant. She had executed what most would consider impossible, yet she carried herself with modesty, allowing the results to speak for themselves. The trainees, still reeling, began to whisper among themselves, some in awe, others in reflection. Alex's previous arrogance had been replaced by a quiet determination, a realization that true skill could not be faked or rushed. As the morning sun rose higher, casting long shadows across the range, Emma's presence remained commanding but understated. The blue rifle, once laughed at, now stood as a symbol of experience, focus, and the quiet authority that only comes with mastery. Every trainee, from the most skeptical to the most overconfident, had witnessed something extraordinary. Alex, above all, felt the weight of the lesson, knowing that humility, discipline, and preparation were just as critical as raw skill. The shock of the moment lingered in the room, yet it was tempered by awe. Emma's calm, precise execution had transformed disbelief into respect. She had silenced mockery, earned recognition, and left an indelible impression on every trainee present. Alex, humbled and reflective, realized that mastery was not about showmanship or bravado. It was about preparation, precision, and an unwavering focus that could turn the impossible into reality. And so, the first stage of the challenge concluded, but its impact reverberated throughout the range. Emma Carter, veteran and sharpshooter, had not only hit a 4,000-meter target with flawless precision, but she had also shifted the attitudes of those around her. Shock and awe filled the room, replacing doubt and ridicule, and even the most confident trainees were forced to acknowledge her undeniable mastery. The lesson was clear: skill, discipline, and focus always triumph over arrogance and assumption. The morning sun climbed higher over the range, casting long golden shadows across the ground. But the energy in the air was no longer just physical, it was electric, charged with awe and quiet admiration. Sergeant Emma Carter, the veteran who had just executed the impossible 4,000-meter shot, remained composed, her blue rifle resting lightly in her hands. She scanned the room with steady eyes, observing the subtle changes in her audience. A group of trainees transformed from skeptics to believers, from mockers to students. Alex Thompson, the rookie whose arrogance had earlier filled the range with snickers, now stood frozen in contemplation. His mind replayed every step of Emma's preparation, the calm adjustments, the precise calculations, the unwavering focus. The smirk that had once defined him had completely vanished, replaced by a mix of humility and admiration. For the first time in his young career, he realized that skill and experience could not be faked, could not be rushed, and certainly could not be substituted with bravado. Around him, other trainees whispered among themselves, their voices hushed, almost reverent. "She didn't just hit it. She made it look effortless," one murmured. Another trainee nodded silently, as if agreeing without words. The collective mood of the range had shifted completely. What had begun as a competitive, almost combative environment was now a quiet recognition of true mastery. Emma's actions had become a living lesson in discipline, patience, and precision. Even the instructors, typically stoic and reserved, allowed subtle acknowledgments to cross their faces. A nod, a quiet murmur of approval, small gestures that conveyed respect, the type of respect earned only through proven ability. They had seen countless shooters over the years, but Emma's performance had transcended ordinary skill. She had taken a near-impossible challenge and executed it flawlessly, demonstrating not only technical precision, but also unwavering mental discipline. Alex took a hesitant step forward, still processing the enormity of what had happened. His hands, once tense and gripping his rifle like a lifeline, now felt heavy with awareness. He realized how narrow-minded his assumptions had been, how he had underestimated her because of her appearance, her calm demeanor, and the unfamiliar blue rifle she carried. All those factors had seemed trivial until they had been replaced by undeniable evidence of her capability. Emma met his gaze briefly, her expression calm but piercing. There was no condescension in her eyes, no trace of vindication or arrogance. Instead, there was acknowledgement, a subtle recognition of his realization. She had proven her skill, yes, but she had also shown that mastery is not just about hitting targets. It is about inspiring respect through action and discipline. Alex felt a strange mix of humility and gratitude. He had learned a lesson without words, taught by someone who lived it every day. The other trainees slowly began to approach, their initial hesitation giving way to admiration. One by one, they offered nods of acknowledgement, small gestures that conveyed respect. Whispers of "incredible shot" and "unbelievable precision" filled the range. The laughter and mockery of earlier had vanished entirely, replaced by a sense of shared reverence for the veteran who had shattered expectations so thoroughly. Even those who had doubted her most were now compelled to acknowledge the truth. Emma Carter had earned their respect. Alex's gaze lingered on her blue rifle, a symbol of the mastery that had just unfolded. He realized that it wasn't the color of the weapon that mattered, nor the size, nor even the reputation that preceded it. What mattered was the person wielding it, the discipline, patience, and focus that transformed a mere tool into an instrument of precision. He silently vowed to carry that lesson forward, understanding that respect is earned through skill and integrity, not arrogance or appearance. Emma adjusted her stance slightly, scanning the range and noting every subtle change in the environment. The wind had shifted again, and she accounted for it instinctively, checking her bipod and scope. Even in the midst of admiration, she remained focused. Mastery, she knew, was not a moment, but a continuous process. The trainees, sensing her unwavering focus, were reminded that true skill required constant vigilance, preparation, and humility. Alex finally found his voice, still shaky with awe. I underestimated you, he admitted, his words carrying the weight of sincerity. Not just your shot, everything. Your focus, your discipline, your experience, I didn't see it coming. Emma nodded slightly, her calm acknowledgement more powerful than any praise she could have spoken. The lesson was complete. Humility, preparation, and respect were inseparable from true mastery. Other trainees began to speak, their voices carrying admiration rather than envy. They asked questions about her training, her techniques, and how she had calculated such a difficult shot. Emma answered patiently, explaining her methods in a way that was instructive but not boastful. Her goal was not to assert superiority, but to teach, to demonstrate that skill comes from dedication, preparation, and the willingness to endure rigorous practice. Alex listened intently, absorbing every word. For the first time, he understood that arrogance and raw talent could not replace discipline and experience. The blue rifle, once a source of ridicule, had become a symbol of that understanding. He watched as Emma methodically checked her weapon, adjusting the scope and bipod as if every detail mattered. In that moment, he realized that mastery is less about individual glory and more about consistent, precise effort that demands both patience and humility. The instructors allowed the trainees to attempt follow-up shots, but even they seemed subdued by the morning's events. Alex observed his peers with new perspective. He realized that mocking or doubting someone without understanding their skill was not just unwise, it was dangerous. Emma's calm, deliberate movements had set a standard he had never seen in training before. Her mastery had reshaped not only the environment of the range, but also the mindset of everyone present. As the trainees took their positions, Emma continued to monitor the horizon, her focus unwavering. Alex, for the first time, felt genuine anticipation rather than smug confidence. He understood that he had a lot to learn, not just about marksmanship, but about humility, preparation, and the way true respect is earned. Watching Emma, he realized that mastery was a combination of technical skill, mental discipline, and the ability to remain calm under extreme pressure. The wind picked up slightly, and Emma adjusted her stance, scanning the horizon. Her calm was infectious, subtly reminding everyone around her that preparation and focus could overcome fear, doubt, and even impossibly long distances. Alex's respect deepened with every movement, every adjustment, every quiet, deliberate breath she took. He knew he would carry this lesson with him for the rest of his career. Finally, as the sun climbed higher, casting a warm glow across the range, Emma lowered her blue rifle completely, signaling that the first phase of the exercise was over. The trainees approached cautiously, still in awe, offering nods of respect, words of admiration, and silent acknowledgement. Alex approached last, hesitating before speaking. "Thank you for showing us how it's done," he said quietly, sincerity in his voice. Emma met his gaze briefly, nodding slightly. No words were needed. The respect had been earned, fully and irrevocably. The room, once filled with mockery and doubt, now resonated with a quiet energy of shared respect. Alex and the other trainees had learned a powerful lesson, that true mastery is earned through dedication, focus, and humility, not arrogance or appearances. The blue rifle, gleaming in the sunlight, had become a symbol of that lesson, a reminder that skill, experience, and patience will always command respect. And in that moment, Sergeant Emma Carter stood at the center of it all, a quiet testament to the power of discipline, preparation, and unwavering focus. She had not only completed an impossible task, but she had also transformed the attitudes, perceptions, and understanding of everyone on that range. Respect had been earned, and it was palpable, woven into every glance, every gesture, and every whispered acknowledgement that followed her remarkable demonstration. The morning had shifted into early afternoon, yet the air on the range remained electric, charged with the reverberations of what had transpired. Sergeant Emma Carter, the veteran whose calm had commanded the attention of even the most skeptical trainees, stood quietly, her blue rifle slung across her shoulder. The drone lay motionless on the distant terrain, a small metallic monument to an achievement that seemed almost mythic. What had begun as ridicule had transformed into a profound lesson in skill, focus, and the earning of respect. Alex Thompson, the rookie who had mocked her only hours earlier, lingered near the edge of the range, hands gripping his rifle with newfound awareness. His mind replayed the impossible 4,000-meter shot, the precise adjustments, and the calm execution that had left him stunned. He realized in that moment that arrogance was a liability, while humility and preparation were tools that could unlock potential beyond imagination. The lesson was personal, seared into his consciousness with undeniable clarity. Around him, the other trainees quietly discussed what they had seen, voices low but brimming with reverence. "I've never seen anything like that," one said, shaking his head. "It's like she doesn't just shoot. She predicts. She calculates. She becomes the rifle." Another nodded, whispering, "And she made it look effortless. I can't even imagine doing that." The mood of the range had completely shifted. Where mockery and doubt had once lingered, now awe and respect held sway. Emma, sensing the collective shift, didn't speak immediately. She allowed the moment to settle, knowing that the impact of her actions would resonate far longer than any words she could offer. Her calm, unshakable demeanor was itself a teaching tool. The blue rifle, once ridiculed, now rested in her hands as a symbol not of vanity or ego, but of the quiet power that comes from skill, patience, and relentless preparation. Alex finally approached her, hesitant but determined. His eyes met hers, and in that gaze, there was an unspoken acknowledgement of the lesson he had learned. I don't even know how to say this," he began, voice tinged with awe. "I was wrong to doubt you. You've shown us what mastery really looks like." Emma's eyes softened slightly, a nod of acknowledgement passing between them. She understood. Respect had been earned, not demanded, and now it was genuine. The instructors, observing the exchange, noted the profound effect Emma's actions had on the trainees. They had designed the exercise to test technical skill, endurance, and mental fortitude, but what they hadn't fully anticipated was the depth of influence a single veteran could have on morale, confidence, and perception. Emma had elevated the experience from a routine exercise into a transformative moment, inspiring the next generation of operators not only to shoot better, but to think differently about focus, preparation, and humility. Alex turned back to the group of trainees, still quiet and reflective. "We've all been thinking about this all morning," he admitted. I know I underestimated her. We underestimated her. But she's just shown us that it's not about appearances. It's not about showing off. It's about preparation, discipline, and skill. That's what earns respect. The trainees nodded, a shared understanding forming among them. The legacy of the shot was not just technical, it was cultural, shaping attitudes, priorities, and the way they would approach every challenge moving forward. Emma lowered her rifle and began walking down the line of trainees, inspecting their equipment, offering brief, constructive feedback, and answering questions about wind calculations, scope adjustments, and firing posture. Her tone was calm, patient, and instructional. She had demonstrated mastery, but now she was giving them tools to understand it, to emulate it, and to internalize it in their own practice. The room was quiet, but filled with a sense of purpose that had been absent at the beginning of the day. Alex followed her, absorbing every word, every tip, every subtle gesture. He realized that the lesson went far beyond marksmanship. Emma's composure, her humility, and her methodical approach to an impossible challenge had taught him more than any lecture or manual ever could. Skill, he understood now, was inseparable from discipline, patience, and respect for the weapon, for the environment, and for the challenge itself. The other trainees began to line up, attempting follow-up shots, but the atmosphere had irrevocably changed. There was no boastfulness, no arrogance, only a quiet, focused determination, inspired by the veterans standing among them. Every trainee was now measuring themselves not against ego or bravado, but against the gold standard Emma had set: preparation, precision, and unwavering focus. Each shot taken afterward carried with it a measure of her influence, a legacy woven into the experience itself. Alex finally took his place at the firing line. His hands no longer trembled, but his mind was alive with the lessons he had absorbed. He adjusted his scope, braced his rifle, and exhaled deliberately, recalling Emma's calm, methodical approach. For the first time, he felt the weight of true focus, of preparation meeting opportunity. He fired not perfectly, but with intention, awareness, and a newfound humility. He glanced up to see Emma observing quietly, her nod of acknowledgement subtle, but deeply meaningful. By mid-afternoon, the trainees were transformed. Their skills had been tested, but more importantly, their perspectives had shifted. Alex, once brash and overconfident, had learned humility. Others had learned patience and the importance of preparation. And all had been touched by the quiet authority of a veteran whose actions spoke louder than any words could. The legacy of her blue rifle was not just a shot, it was a standard, a benchmark, and an inspiration for everyone who had witnessed it. Emma stood at the edge of the range, surveying the trainees with a quiet pride. She had faced skepticism, mockery, and doubt, and had turned it into a teaching moment that transcended ordinary instruction. The blue rifle rested lightly on her shoulder, gleaming in the sunlight, a symbol of experience, skill, and mastery. She had not only executed the impossible, but had left a lasting imprint on those who would follow in her footsteps. Alex approached her one final time before the day ended. "Thank you," he said quietly, sincerity in every word. "I won't forget this. Not the shot, not the lesson, not the way you handled everything. I want to be better. I want to learn from this." Emma smiled faintly, a rare but genuine expression. "Good," she replied simply. "Respect is earned through effort, focus, and persistence. You've seen that today. Now take it forward." As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting a warm glow over the range, the trainees began to pack up, but the energy of the morning lingered. The impossible shot had become more than a technical achievement. It had become a lesson in leadership, humility, and excellence. Alex walked with a renewed sense of purpose, understanding that true mastery was measured not just in accuracy, but in discipline, patience, and the ability to inspire respect without demanding it. Emma watched them leave, her calm demeanor unchanged. The blue rifle, now more than just a tool, rested lightly in her hands. She had executed an impossible shot, earned the respect of skeptics, and left a lasting impression that would influence these trainees far beyond their range. She knew that legacy was built not just on victories, but on the example set for others, on the quiet, deliberate demonstration of skill and character that inspired admiration and growth. The range fell silent again, but the echoes of the day remained. Alex, once mocking, now carried a lesson in humility and respect that would shape his future. The other trainees, inspired and transformed, had witnessed not just a remarkable feat of marksmanship, but the living embodiment of mastery itself. Emma Carter, veteran and marksman, had left her mark, not just on the target, but on the hearts, minds, and ambitions of every person present. The legacy was complete. The impossible shot had been fired, the lesson had been taught, and respect had been earned. Emma's quiet authority, skill, and preparation had created a ripple effect that would extend far beyond the range, shaping the future of those who had witnessed it, and proving that true mastery is recognized not by appearance or reputation, but by action, precision, and unwavering focus. And as she finally turned away, blue rifle slung across her shoulder, Sergeant Emma Carter left the range not just as a veteran, but as a legend in the making, a testament to the enduring power of preparation, skill, and the quiet, unstoppable authority of true expertise.